Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this audio series, I present a profound civilizational reading of the Qur'an, exploring the rise and fall of societies, the ethics of power, technology, justice, corruption, and the human's future through the recurring patterns of history. Why the Quran speaks about civilization? Well, when most people think about the Quran, they think about worship. They think about spirituality, personal morality, and guidance for individual life. And indeed, the Quran is all of these things. But the Quran also speaks about something much larger. It speaks about civilization. It speaks about nations, power, justice, corruption, wealth, oppression, leadership, and the rise and fall of societies. Again and again, the Quran asks humanity to look at history, not simply to remember the past, but to understand ourselves. One of the remarkable things about the Quran is how often it returns to earlier civilizations. The stories of Noah, Ad, Thamud, Pharaoh, Qarun, Solomon, and many others appear repeatedly through the Quran. At first glance, these may seem like stories of ancient peoples long gone. But the Quran pushes the reader toward a deeper question, to not only what happened, but also why did it happen, what causes societies to collapse, why does power become corruption, why do prosperous civilizations decay, and why do human beings continue repeating the same mistakes? The Quran invites humanity to reflect. As the Quran says, have they not traveled through the earth and observed how was the end of those before them? They were greater than them in power, and they cultivated the earth and built upon it more than they have built. This verse is deeply important. The Quran reminds humanity that earlier civilizations were often stronger, wealthier, and more advanced than later societies. Yet, they still collapsed. Why did they collapse? Because material strength alone cannot save a civilization that loses its moral balance. One of the central ideas of the Quran is that the crisis of civilization begins first inside the human being. Before corruption appears in government, it appears in hearts. Before injustice spreads through institutions, it spreads through human behavior. Before societies collapse externally, they begin collapsing internally. The Quran, therefore, focuses not only on systems but on the moral condition of people themselves, as the Qur'an reminds us, saying, "Indeed, Allah does not change the condition of people until they change what is within themselves." This is one of the greatest civilization principles of the Quran. Real change begins within human consciousness. Today, humanity possesses extraordinary power. We live in an age of advanced technology, global communication, artificial intelligence, massive economic systems, and scientific achievement unlike anything seen before. Yet, at the same time, humanity struggles with loneliness, anxiety, environmental destruction, inequality, propaganda, and the erosion of trust within society. Material progress has not necessarily produced inner balance. And this is precisely where the Quran becomes profoundly relevant. Because the Quran does not only ask how advanced is a civilization, it also asks how healthy is the human soul within that civilization. This audiobook is not intended as political propaganda or merely historical storytelling. Its purpose is reflection. Together, we will explore the Quran as a study of civilization, a philosophy of history, and a guide to understanding recurring human behavior across time. We will examine power, wealth, corruption, leadership, knowledge, morality, and the forces that shape the destiny of nations. Not simply in the ancient world, but in our world today also. We have to read a different way of reading the Quran. The Quran describes its stories as ibrah, lessons for people of understanding, as the Quran says. Indeed, in their stories, there is a lesson for people of understanding. A lesson in the Quran sense is not simply hearing a story. It is crossing from the surface of events toward deeper understanding. The Quran, therefore, asks us to move beyond names, dates, and historical details toward the deeper laws governing human civilization. In summary, perhaps one of the most important questions facing humanity today is this: can a civilization survive if it gains power but loses wisdom? Can societies remain stable if they advance technology while declining morally? The Quran repeatedly suggests that civilizations are not destroyed only by external enemies. Often they collapse from within. And perhaps this is why the Quran constantly calls humanity back toward reflection, justice, humility, and moral responsibility. Because perhaps the future of civilization itself depends upon the conditions of the human soul. Thank you. We'll see you in next sessions.